It was a quiet afternoon at the small diner on Maple Street, the kind of place where regulars filled the booths, and the air always smelled faintly of coffee and freshly baked biscuits. Behind the counter, Mia adjusted her apron, glancing up at the clock. 2 hours until the end of her shift. The day had been like any other, taking orders, refilling coffee cups, and offering polite smiles. But Mia had a warmth about her, the kind that made strangers feel like they'd known her forever. That's when she noticed him. A boy, no older than 7, standing awkwardly near the entrance. His clothes were rumpled, his shoes scuffed, and there was a look in his eyes that stopped Mia in her tracks, a mix of confusion and sadness. He clutched a small, worn backpack, glancing around as though searching for something or someone. Mia walked over, crouching down to his level. "Hey there, buddy," she said softly, her voice gentle and kind. "Are you okay? Are you waiting for someone?" The boy hesitated, his lower lip trembling. I don't know where my mom is," he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. Her heart sank. She could see the fear in his eyes, the way he clung to that backpack like it was his only anchor in a world suddenly too big and unfamiliar. "It's okay," Mia assured him. "We'll figure it out together. Are you hungry?" He nodded, just once, and Mia didn't think twice. She led him to a booth in the corner, away from the noise of the other diners, and handed him a menu. "Pick whatever you like," she said with a smile. A few minutes later, Mia placed a plate of fried chicken, fries, and a small carton of milk in front of him. The boy's face lit up, a brief flicker of relief, and for the first time since he walked in, he smiled. It wasn't much, just a meal, but to him, it seemed to mean the world. Across the diner, Mia's manager, Mr. Hargrove, had been watching the exchange. He was a stern man, the kind who ran a tight ship and valued rules above all else. As Mia returned to the counter, he called her over. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked, his tone sharp. "He's just a kid," Mia replied, keeping her voice calm. "He's lost and hungry. I couldn't just turn him away." Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "Did he pay for that meal?" She hesitated. "No, but—" "No buts," he interrupted. "You know the policy. Every meal gets paid for, no exceptions. If you can't follow the rules, then maybe this isn't the place for you." Mia felt a pang of frustration, but also something stronger, a sense of clarity. She wasn't going to apologize for doing what she knew was right. "Then maybe it isn't," she said quietly, removing her apron and setting it on the counter. The diner grew silent as Mia walked out the door, the boy's grateful smile still fresh in her mind. She had no idea what would happen next, but she didn't regret her decision. 2 hours later, as Mia sat in her tiny apartment, trying to process what had just happened, there was a knock at her door. It was strange. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, she was greeted by a man in a tailored suit. His expression was serious, but there was a softness in his eyes. "Miss Carter?" he asked, confirming her name. She nodded, confused. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" The man glanced down at the briefcase in his hand, then back at her. "I believe you already have," he said. And in that moment, Mia's life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Mia stood frozen in the doorway, the man's words swirling in her mind. She wasn't sure what he meant, but there was something about his presence that made her stomach tighten. His suit was crisp, his shoes polished, and he held himself with an air of quiet authority. He looked out of place in the hallway of her modest apartment building. "I don't understand," Mia said cautiously, gripping the edge of the door. "Who are you?" The man offered a polite smile and handed her a business card. "My name is Charles, and I work for Mr. Everett Stanton. He's the CEO of Stanton Enterprises." Mia glanced down at the card, the name not ringing any bells. She was about to ask more when Charles continued. Mr. Stanton would like to meet with you. Tonight, if possible. Her confusion deepened. Why would a CEO want to meet me? I think you've got the wrong person. I assure you, we have the right person, Charles replied. Mr. Stanton was made aware of your actions earlier today. He admires people who show kindness, especially when it's not easy to do so. Let's just say he believes you have potential. Mia blinked, struggling to make sense of his words. It didn't feel real. She had just lost her job for helping a lost kid, and now some powerful CEO wanted to meet her. It had to be a mistake, or worse, a prank. But there was something about Charles, his calm, professional demeanor, that made her hesitate. She thought about the boy's face when he bit into that first piece of fried chicken, the small moment of joy in what must have been a terrifying day for him. Was this somehow connected? Okay, she said finally, her voice unsure. Where do I need to go? Charles smiled again, as if he'd been expecting her answer. I'll take you there. An hour later, Mia found herself stepping into a black sedan that whisked her away from the familiarity of her neighborhood to the glittering skyline of the city's financial district. The car pulled up to a towering glass building, and Mia couldn't help but feel out of place. She smoothed down her simple blouse and jeans, wishing she'd had time to change into something more formal. Inside, the lobby was all marble floors and shimmering chandeliers. The receptionist greeted Charles with a nod and waved them toward a private elevator. Mia's nerves only grew as they ascended to the top floor. When the doors opened, she was led into a sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city lights. Sitting behind a large desk was a man who looked to be in his late 50s, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Mia Carter, he said, standing and extending his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Everett Stanton. She shook his hand, her voice catching slightly as she replied, Nice to meet you too, Mr. Stanton. Though I have to admit, I'm not sure why I'm here. He gestured for her to sit, his expression softening. I'll get straight to the point. Earlier today, you helped a young boy in need. You didn't know him, and you certainly didn't owe him anything, but you chose to act out of compassion. That's rare these days. Mia felt a flicker of embarrassment. It wasn't a big deal, she said quickly. He was just a kid. Anyone would have done the same. Not anyone, Stanton countered. And not everyone would risk their livelihood for it. Mia frowned, her mind flashing back to her manager's scowl, and the moment she'd walked out of the diner. Wait, how do you even know about that? Stanton leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped. The boy you helped is my grandson. The words hit Mia like a thunderclap. Her eyes widened as she replayed the day's events, suddenly connecting the dots. Your grandson. He nodded. His name is Liam. He got separated from his nanny at the park, and by the time we realized he was missing, he had wandered quite a distance. We were frantic. You can't imagine the relief we felt when we found him safe and cared for. Mia sat back, her thoughts spinning. She had no idea the boy had come from such a wealthy family, nor did it matter to her at the time. She'd just seen a kid who needed help. I'm glad he's okay, she said quietly, still trying to process everything. Stanton's gaze softened. Because of you, he is. And I believe someone with your character deserves an opportunity to do more. That's why I'm offering you a position at my company. Her jaw nearly dropped. A position? But I don't even know what you do. We're one of the largest philanthropic organizations in the country, Stanton explained. We focus on community outreach, education, and creating opportunities for people to succeed. And we need people like you People who act selflessly and care about others to help us make a difference. Mia didn't know what to say. It felt too good to be true. Just hours ago, she'd been fired from a dead-end job, and now she was being offered a role in something meaningful, something that could change lives. But as she sat there, doubt began to creep in. Could she really do this? She wasn't experienced in corporate work, and the idea of stepping into a world so different from her own was intimidating. "I don't know if I'm the right person for this," she admitted, her voice hesitant. Stanton smiled, as though he'd expected her uncertainty. "You've already proven you are. You just need to believe it yourself." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Mia let herself imagine what it might feel like to be part of something bigger than herself, to make a real difference. But before she could answer, the office door opened, and a woman rushed in, her face pale with worry. "Mr. Stanton, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've just received news. There's been a development with the Liam situation." Stanton's expression darkened instantly, the calm warmth replaced by a sharp focus. "What kind of development?" The woman hesitated, glancing at Mia before answering. "It appears someone may have been watching him before he got lost. We think it might not have been an accident." Maya's stomach dropped, a chill running down her spine. Suddenly, the boy's lost expression, his rumpled clothes, the way he clutched his backpack, it all took on a more ominous tone. And just like that, the room seemed to close in, the stakes rising higher than Mia had ever imagined. Mia's heart raced as she looked between Mr. Stanton and the woman who had brought the unsettling news. The air in the room seemed to shift, tension rising like a wave ready to crash. Liam hadn't just wandered off. Someone might have been watching him, waiting for an opportunity. "What do you mean someone was watching him?" Stanton asked, his voice steady but with an unmistakable edge. The woman, who Mia guessed was part of his security team, took a deep breath before answering. "We reviewed footage from the park where Liam was last seen. There's a man lingering near the playground, keeping his distance but always in sight of Liam and his nanny. He disappears from the footage just before Liam goes missing." Mia felt a shiver run down her spine. "You think he was trying to take him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman nodded grimly. "It's a strong possibility. We've contacted law enforcement and are taking every precaution, but we need to stay vigilant. Whoever this was might not give up so easily." Stanton turned to Mia, his expression grave but still filled with gratitude. "You may have done more than just help a lost boy today. You might have saved him from something far worse." Maya's mind reeled. She thought back to the boy's quiet demeanor, his clutch on that worn backpack. It all made sense now, the fear in his eyes, the way he'd barely spoken until he felt safe. She hadn't realized just how close he might have been to danger. "Is Liam safe now?" she asked, needing to know. "He's home with his parents and surrounded by security," Stanton assured her. "But this situation is far from over. People like this don't always stop after one attempt." Mia felt a surge of protectiveness for the boy she'd only just met. He deserved to feel safe, to live without fear. And now, more than ever, she understood why Stanton's work was so important. Helping people, protecting them, it wasn't just a job, it was a responsibility. Before she could say anything more, Stanton's phone buzzed. He answered it quickly, his tone sharp and focused. After a few moments, he hung up and turned back to the room. "The police have identified the man. He has a history of targeting wealthy families, and he's already left town. But they're confident they can track him down before he tries again." The relief in the room was palpable, but Mia could still feel the weight of everything that had happened. This wasn't the kind of story she'd expected to be part of, but she was grateful she'd been there when Liam needed her. As the evening wore on, Stanton's team continued to handle the situation, and Mia found herself sitting quietly, reflecting on how drastically her day had changed. She'd started it as a diner waitress, unsure of her future, and now she was sitting in a skyscraper, contemplating a job offer that could allow her to make a real impact. When Stanton finally returned to the room, he looked tired but more at ease. "Thank you for staying, Mia," he said. "I know this has been a lot to take in." She gave him a small smile. "It's been a day, that's for sure." Stanton chuckled softly. "I meant what I said earlier. I think you have a lot to offer, and I'd be honored to have you on my team. But I understand if you need time to think about it." Mia looked at him, thinking about everything that had happened, the boy, the job she'd lost, and the possibility of doing something meaningful. She realized she didn't need time to decide. "I'd like to take the job," she said, her voice steady despite the swirl of emotions inside her. Stanton smiled warmly. "I'm glad to hear it. I think this is the beginning of something great." Over the next few weeks, Mia settled into her new role, learning the ins and outs of Stanton's organization. It wasn't always easy. There were challenges and steep learning curves. But she poured her heart into the work, knowing it mattered. She never forgot Liam's face or the moment she decided to help him, and it became her guiding light in everything she did. And as she walked into the office one morning, greeted by a team of people who shared her passion for helping others, Mia realized something important. Sometimes life has a way of knocking you down just so you can find the courage to rise higher than you ever thought possible. The boy she had helped that day was safe, and the man who had tried to harm him was caught a few months later. But the impact of that moment rippled far beyond what Mia could have imagined. It reminded her, and everyone who heard her story, that even small acts of kindness can create extraordinary change. And sometimes the choices we make in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, end up defining the course of our lives. For Mia, it all started with a simple plate of fried chicken and the decision to help when it mattered most.